There we go. My mic up, music down. So many buttons. I'm so nervous, as I always am. Dr. G, welcome. Welcome to the Court of Public Opinion here. We are so excited to have you here tonight as we've been watching the Maya trial all day long, and it's just been crazy. And your name has come up many times as people say, we need your take on this. Dr. G, welcome. Welcome. How are you doing, first of all?
I'm great. Yeah, it's wonderful to be here. I'm always happy to be here.
Last time I was with you, we were celebrating your 100,000 subscribers benchmark, and I happened to see that you've got something shiny over your shoulder. Is that just a mirror? What do you have up there?
I was so excited to get this. I crossed the 100,000, and it was exciting, but getting that really cements it, man. I'm telling you,
that is neat. That is a huge accomplishment. We're just amazing. We're cheering for you as well over here. That is incredible, and that's awesome. We are so excited to talk to you today about two people that we've watched depositions for, and we learned today that both of them will be testifying live later on in the trial.
Oh,
I know it's oh my goodness, I'm so excited I can hardly sit still. But it's Cathi Bedy and Sally Smith, and these are two individuals in the trial. Just if you go back to the first days of Maya first being brought into the hospital, they had pivotal roles in sort of the direction they took at the very beginning. And many people might say that direction they took might have been wrong, and it sort of led to the decisions that they got here. I had the best of intentions to be able to show you video, and I can see it, but you can't hear the audio if I show you. But we've got, I can show some body language. I don't know. Tell me how you want to start with this, with discussing the two. Would you rather start with Sally Smith or Cathi Bedy?
Let's start with Cathi Bedy. I feel like that one, for whatever reason, like I'm working on a video right now, and I'm starting with her. I'm not sure what the logic is. That just makes sense to me. Unless you have a preference, I don't really care.
We're going to go both ways, so it doesn't matter which one we do first.
Yeah,
but and I've got people asking questions in chat, so I'll try to keep up on those as well while we're going. So Cathi Bedy, she's a social worker. She also has medical privileges in the hospital. So her areas of responsibility sort of overlap a little bit, and she might cross the line from one position into the other area to do this job. And that's what puts the hospital on the hook with this parent agency issue. And she's a bit of work. Have you sat down and watched her testimony?
I've watched I haven't watched every bit of everybody's testimony from the trial, but I've watched all of hers. I've watched all of Dr. Sally Smith. I'm very familiar with their testimony. And one thing I want to explain to folks in terms of my own background and how it's relevant here. So some of y'all know me for talking about body language, and most of y'all know that I'm a clinical and forensic psychologist. Long ago, I used to do, and well, I still do evaluations some, but not like this. I used to do parental fitness evaluations a lot. So in other words, if a child was removed from their parents' custody, they had to do a parental fitness evaluation, so we would know if they had the capacity to care for their kid or where they were in that process and all of that. So I'm very familiar with working with the Department of Child and Family Services and the kinds of knowledge we need to have to know whether or not somebody is safe to be around their kid. So I have a lot of relevant background related to what they're looking at in this case. And one other piece I just want to throw out there, because I don't know how well people understand this, but oftentimes I've seen people refer to the courts making decisions, or like the DFACs or DCF made these decisions, and those are almost always based on the opinions of professionals. So DCF, they oftentimes go, okay, well, this psychologist said we should do this, so they do that. Then the court says, well, this psychologist or this physician said we should do this, so we do that. So it's not like judges are just out there making up what they're doing. They're oftentimes looking at what we have to say.
So you've been in this area in other cases. Obviously, you can't go into your patient records and things like that. But tell me, you said you wanted to approach this as how a juror would take this testimony or these observances. I guess, what do you want to say? Because it's more than just what they say. The words are half of the testimony, and you're here to talk a little bit about the other half.
Right. And so, part of what I want people to understand is that when a jury is observing these depositions or testimonies, whatever you want to call, I guess these are testimonies, but anyway, when they're observing this information, how they would react to it. So I want to talk some about the way that they respond to questions, some of the body language they use, and how a jury might react to some of that.
All right, so let's start with Catherine Bedy. What was your first impression as I believe if on the very beginning, the first time we saw her, she was looking down. At first, I thought she was on her phone, but when I went back and watched it in slow motion, she had a pencil. She was taking some notes. It looked like she was completely distracted, looking down and then looks up. I was like, "What's up?" What was your impression as she was testifying, and especially between direct and cross examination? How did that change?
The challenge is that juries love it when people answer questions directly. And one of the observations was that they would ask her questions, and sometimes the answers weren't really answers to what they asked. And it was frustrating for me personally, because it's like, as a jury, juries would rather you answer a question directly, but poorly, than not answer the question. They do not like it. Juries do not like it when you are evasive, because then they think that you have something to hide or are being deceptive. I'm not saying that they are, but people might get that impression based on how they respond sometimes.
And there was a lot of evasiveness, especially on cross. It seemed that she was not happy to be there from the get-go. She did not want to answer questions, even on direct, and almost had a sense of superiority of looking down at you. And I realized that might be just a sense of how she wore her glasses.
No, but I can understand why people would get that impression. Yeah, what the reason for it, it's hard to say, but a lot of people are going to interpret it that way because of that. So maybe it was because of glasses or whatever, but I think a lot of people unconsciously are going to feel uncomfortable or frustrated with some of her testimony, or might not like it. So
let me go to a little tangent here. Say you're a witness and you're called to testify to something that doesn't look good, right? And she's testifying about things that sort of make the hospital look bad. It makes her look like she was pretty sort of making decisions arbitrarily. How could she have shared this in a manner that the jury would be able to listen to it and not get that negative vibe? What would she need to do?
Being authentic and just being direct. Like I said, there's something to be said about that. When you're just like, look, yeah, like this is the way things were, and just telling it in a very direct way, then the jury can decide what they want to do with it. But they just want the information. They're going to get it one way or the other. So the more direct you are to say, yes, this is what we did. You don't have to say it was good, it was bad, it was otherwise. Just answering directly. People tend to like that. It makes it feel authentic. It makes it feel true. And then they can decide whether or not they do or don't like what you chose to do.
Yeah. So when you say they're going to get it otherwise, it does look bad when it gets dragged out of you on cross-examination, and you're like, yes, through clenched teeth. And we saw a few of those.
We did,
where there was evasive answering and almost avoidance, and the attorneys have to say, hey, that wasn't the question, or let me ask you again, or so you're saying, is that a yes? Yeah. And so clearly that was present quite a bit. Is there something? Was there anything about her that indicated that maybe, or she might have been showing signs that any of her answers might not be the whole truth and she knows it, type thing?
So, I mean, I would say, I'll phrase it this way. I think, I don't want to say whether or not she was telling the truth, but I think that a jury might watch her and think that she's being deceptive because of the manner that she replied in. So I understand what you're asking. And I think that because she would talk around the answer, it would be like asking, what did you have for lunch today? And you'd be like, well, my wife told me to eat lunch, and I have eaten before. And just, talking around, it's like it's related to it, but that's not answering the question. So was she showing signs of deception? I can't say that, but I think that the jury might believe that she was not being forthright. I think it's possible.
Yeah, I want to get in the heads of the jurors. I really do. And that's the one people we can't see, right? We can't, but we have been able to hear a lot of the questions they've been asking. Are you picking up anything from the questions as far as behavioral analyst that you're like, hey, this is what I know about the jury already without seeing them? Just being able to hear a couple of their answers, their rapport with the judge, and then the questions with the attorneys.
I have not heard enough of them to say, actually. I've been keeping up with as much of this as I can, but there's so much that I haven't kept up with all of that, so I can't say.
So let me tell you, today after direct and cross examination were finished, the judge turns to the jury on one witness and says, do you have any questions? And they had 18 pages of questions for the witness.
Wow. Okay.
Detailed questions. And it was, and some of them are written almost in the voice of the plaintiff. It seems like many of them are very much, I mean, previous days we had words like, are you telling this jury, written by the jury? That's how they wrote it out. Are you telling this juror that that you believe this? And it's like, oh, if I was defense. And speaking of body language, a ton of body language on the defense as well. With at times Mr. Hunter with his head in his hand, throwing up his hands literally. Mr. Shapiro has had it as well. There's just so much to go on that's going on right here in this court. Going back to Catherine Bedy, though, where do you want to go with her testimony? Is there anything else you want to talk about her specifically? And I realize you're going to have your own video. I don't want to spill all the beans about this.
Yeah. Well, one of the challenges, we can talk about any of it, is when she talked about her training with Munchausen by proxy. That's one of the parts that gets a little bit dicey as far as her responses go, because they say, were you trained in Munchausen by proxy? And for those who don't know or fully understand Munchausen by proxy, it's essentially a person harming their child so that they can get attention and all of these things. That they are the proxy, so to speak. And so Bedy is it Bedy or Bedy? I always say her name wrong.
Bedy is how we've been saying it. Bedy.
It always messes me up. Okay, with Bedy, there are some things that she says regarding her training of it that didn't feel as direct as maybe they could have. And I can explain this to you, or did you want to show that part? It's up to you.
I'm trying to get it to show, and I cannot get it to go on the screen. I can see it on 6 different screens, and I can't get it to go to you. I apologize. Had I had like 10 more minutes, I could have made that cable connection. But,
so in essence, basically what they say is, what kind of specific training have you had on Munchausen by proxy? And she says, well, we learned about it in psychopathology in grad school. Now, she's an LCSW, which is about half the amount of years of schooling as getting your doctorate. And I had a psychopathology class, and it was probably like a paragraph, like that's not being trained.
There were no questions on the test about CPS.
Maybe a question, but it was. So when she said that was where she got her training, that's where I was like, if somebody asked me if I was trained in it, I would say yes, because I was supervised by somebody who had some specialty in it. And when I did a case and this is true, when I did a case related to Munchausen by proxy, I had somebody supervising me that knew what they were doing. We were able to talk through it. Like I was supervised on it and trained specifically in that, having to review videos, all sorts of stuff. So it's a very different answer. And I'm used to being asked those kinds of questions.
Speaking of questions, I've got one here from Very British. I want to put up on the screen. It says, Recover Addict, question for you both or anyone else. Does not believing or believing a witness or their answer legally count for getting to the truth of the matter if facts agree with the witness? So you're asking for a legal conclusion, which I don't think either of us are qualified to do. But when it comes to believing the witness, what's the jury's role, and how does this fit together with what they're observing and then the facts? How do they marry these two up?
There's a reason that some attorneys are better than others. Some are more likable than others, and that can affect juries. Sometimes experts are more convincing, and that can affect juries. So the way that you present information, the way that you talk about information, two people can have the same information. The way one person says it can make it land very differently with a jury. So how information is presented becomes part of the facts, because somebody becomes believable. You go, okay, I think they're being evasive. I don't believe anything they're saying. Because, like, for example, as an expert witness, if we refer to it as basically impeaching your own testimony. Like if you say something stupid, the rest of anything you're going to say is meaningless, even if it's all true. It's like, okay, well, he said that and he's an idiot, so we don't believe anything now.
There's so many witnesses that we need to tear apart on this and just analyze. Let me bring up another one here from Valerie Ivy. She says, Dr. G, Bedy used distancing language when asked about her communications with risk management. Do you think she heavily influenced risk management's decisions on interpreting court orders?
So I haven't. So that I can't say whether or not she influenced risk management. She certainly seemed to rely on risk management a lot. She talks about them enough in her testimony, saying that, I always went back to risk, to ask them what to do. So whether or not it was that they were making decisions based on her or it was vice versa, I don't know. It's
what does that distancing language, what does that mean? What does that indicate when somebody's when we saw that earlier today as well, another doctor that was saying, she used the term generally speaking before almost every answer, and there was this qualifier that she put out. What does that indicate?
So if somebody is so distancing language, like I guess it gives people a little bit of wiggle room so that they're not being absolute, so that they can uh,
Uh,
change their answer a little bit if there gets to be clarification, I suppose.
How convenient.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Sorry if we didn't cover this. I apologize. I completely blew over the intro for you, where I should say why we should listen to Dr. G and why everyone should follow you on YouTube. Elizabeth says, new to Dr. G, what's his specialty?
So I'm a clinical and a forensic psychologist. The clinical part is basically doing therapy, that sort of stuff. Forensic part is doing evaluations and being an expert witness and providing expert testimony. As far as my other areas of specialty, I'm a certified personality disorder expert. I also do body language, and I work with a ton of anxious people. So that's sort of like the broad overview. And on top of that, I have an MBA and do counterterrorism, but that's not really so relevant to anything we're talking about today.
So just boring stuff, really.
Yeah, right.
That's all you do.
Yeah.
Those, honestly, they're fascinating jobs. When you get into counterterrorism, that's I guess we can't talk about it because it's it's all classified. All right. As far as Bedy, was there any behavior that she repeated? Somebody said, does she have a tell? And a tell is usually when what you have information and you don't want to disclose it. Like if you have a good hand in poker, you might have a tell where it's like, oh, she's got something. But maybe in this case, it might be a tell where like, oh, great, they're getting to something I don't want to say.
She didn't seem to try to hide much. She said a lot on her face at all times. Like a tell would usually be somebody who is like sitting very still and then occasionally does something. Like she seemed to be pretty easy to read, I would say. Like she didn't try to seem to hide any body language. I know she played with her pen some when she got anxious, but a lot of people do, so that's not entirely surprising. But I wouldn't say she had a specific tell.
Do you think she's honestly completely comfortable with her actions based on watching that? But looking back at everything she did, is she okay with that? Like she would do it again had it happened again today?
I would be surprised if any of them would do it again if it happened again today. That's a hard question for me to answer. I would say that based on there was like based on the questions asking about letting Maya sit in her lap or giving her hugs and stuff like that, that she and I would be shocked if she didn't agree. She seemed pretty uncomfortable during those questions. I don't know if you recall those or not, but they were basically
flat out denial. She's like, that didn't happen. Didn't do it.
Yeah.
Nope. And I wouldn't. And one of them, she said, it doesn't sound like something I would do, or there was a weird answer that's just like that gave her room for it to say, yes, it did happen. I can't remember exactly what the question was about, but it was about the unwanted touch at some point.
Right. Yeah, no, that is, yes, that's right. She's asking if she would want kisses or something like that. But the thing that makes me think that she might, and obviously I can't speak for her, but my guess would be that there's aspects of it she might want to do differently, because at one point they asked, so do you think that Maya didn't, I'm paraphrasing here, that she didn't experience pain? And she's like, oh, I didn't say that. Right. Because if she 100% believed that Munchausen by proxy was right, then I'd be like, yeah, I don't think she experienced pain. I think it was in her head or whatever, right? I would stick with that response, and that was not her response. She was very like, no, don't put words in my mouth. I didn't say that. Yeah.
I apologize. We're jumping all over the place with questions. If you're okay with it, if not, you can just say pass, and we'll give you like three strikes. You can pass it out. P for real says recovery addict Dr. G, do clinical research PhD require dissertation? If so, I'm curious what your dissertation was in, only because I enjoy the scientific part of psych.
So I had a very interesting dissertation. Mine was whether or not you could get your social needs met online, and this was back before. And so
here you are.
Yeah, I know, it's funny. And that was probably, though I wrote my dissertation, this would have been 16 years ago or something like that. So it would have been the social media was in its infancy at the time. That was a lot of early research on that. So that was what it
was. No regrets. You went to this field, right?
No, I love this field. It's great.
All right. I'm just making sure I'm trying to stay up to date with the questions. Going back to Catherine Bedy. She's going to testify again. And she's going to be testifying in person. One of the issues that's relevant in this trial, especially right now, is that the plaintiff has used up so much of their time early on in the case that they only have 6 hours and 20 minutes left for all the cross-examination they're going to do between now and the end of the trial. And also, I think their rebuttal has to fit in there as well. They've been using about an hour and 40 minutes every day. And they're going to run out of time sometime early next week if they're stingy.
Yeah.
I think these two witnesses, Catherine Bedy and Sherry
Sally
Smith, Sally, her name is, I knew it started with an S and I lost it. Sally Smith are critical ones that they need to have time left over for. But
Yes.
when that happens, what would you say about the jurors when they've already seen them on video once,
Mhm.
and now they're going to see them in person?
Mhm.
Are they at risk of sort of impeaching themselves by behavior, by being different on the stand? Is there any?
I'm not sure that this isn't meant to sound crude or whatever. I'm not sure they're capable of being much different on the stand. Like their personalities seem pretty cemented. So, but yeah, I mean, if they were, I think them being different on the stand could only help their cause.
They can only go up from where they were. It was a lot of it. I'll say the word cringy. There was some moments that you felt an indifference from them. Whether it was "that's not my job" type thing, and we've heard that from a lot of doctors. And I realize in some cases, I mean, if I asked you, recommendations for immunizations, you'd be like, "Hey, that's not what I do. I'm not
Right.
I'm not the type of doctor. That's not my job." But the way this came across was I don't know. It seemed like they seemed too hot to touch, and just
Well, one thing we didn't see a lot of, and I'm not saying they don't experience or feel this, but you did, there was, and once again, the context I know does not sort of lend itself to appearing compassionate, but neither one of them felt very compassionate when talking about Maya or her situation or any of that. There's for a lot of folks in my field, particularly in psychology, we generally, at least the ones of us that are any good at what we do, are pretty compassionate people. And it is hard for us to do this. The parental fitness stuff that I've done, like when I've had to work with a court and get parental rights terminated, in the vast majority of cases was exceedingly difficult. Emotionally, that is a very hard thing to go through. So even so in this context of being deposed or providing testimony in that way, it's not easy. And it's hard to hide how challenging that is.
Would this be also show through in their bedside manner as they're treating a patient? Do you think or do you think they can have a different, because they work in pediatrics, they work with kids?
Yeah, that's not lost on me. I mean, so I would hope they have a different bedside manner. It's and I'm really not trying to be critical, but it's there's a certain, so here's how I'll explain it. Like with Dr. Smith, for example, her energy is very sort of curt and aggressive, and is not probably, she doesn't feel like she would be the easiest person to probably get along with. It's just, I don't know how else to say it, but I mean, I know a number of different ways I could say it, but it's if this situation was flipped, for example, if she was on the side of a team that was going after somebody who had done something really egregious, you would look at how sort of aggressive she is and people would be like, good, she's fighting for the right cause. But when it's flipped and it's towards a victim, people are really not going to like her, the type of personality that she has, because they're accusing her of mistreating somebody, and that does not play well for her in this case. But if it was flipped, it might.
Do you think that personality trait where she might be a little bit aggressive or abrasive in person, do you think that played into the decisions that were made in the hospital? If there are people that wouldn't challenge a decision because of that?
That's a good question. I don't know. It's hard. I don't know how other licensed physicians are with each other. Like in psychology, that's a really good question. I don't know. I'd have to think about that, because I've definitely been around abrasive personalities, but I'll be the first to argue with them. So wouldn't be a problem for me. But I don't know, maybe some people would, or they might just say, okay, she's a licensed physician. I'm leaving this in her hands, and it's her license that is on the line for this, so she can do whatever she wants. She's also like the head. So,
so talking about Sally Smith more, what was your main takeaway from watching her?
So my main takeaway is I think that she still feels like she made the right decisions. I mean, she seemed, from what I could tell, to stand by the decision she made. I believe she thinks that Beata did have Munchausen by proxy, from what it sounded like. It sounds like she's sticking with her guns. So as far as I can tell, she still agrees with the decisions she made, it sounds like.
So the court can't go into Chapter 39 very much, but but we don't have the same restriction. The process the hospital was involved in is a process that exists at basically every hospital. These mandated reporters, every doctor is one. Unfortunately, these situations where there is a problem, they do happen. They do exist. From that standpoint, did you see any flags were raised, or where do you think they went wrong in this?
So, well, no, I mean, the challenge is when it comes to mandated reporting, because I've reported plenty. I've been involved in situations where the mandated reporting, it either happened, and I'll answer Debbie's question in a second, or I've called and said, hey, like, here's something that was said to me, and here's the process that looks like. And this long answer does have a relevance here. So if somebody reports something to me that I think needs to be reported to the Department of Child and Family Services, I'll tell the family, like, look, guys, based on what we're talking about, I have to call DFACS when we're done today. So I don't want to freak you out, but I have to do it. We have no choice. I now know information I didn't know before. I give them a heads up. It's not, I don't ever want it to surprise them unless telling them that would put somebody in danger, in which case I wouldn't. But then when you call, I'm going to call it DFACS because that's what we call it in Georgia. It's DCF in Florida, but whatever. Point being, when you call, they ask you, what's your profession? What's your name? All the contact information, all that stuff. And then you tell them, here's what was reported to me. Here's how the concerns I have. Here's how legitimate I think it is. DFACS will respond based on how serious you say that it is. So to me, I presume that anybody who contacted them must have said in very serious terms, like, this, something needs to happen here. Because if I was to, for the information that I know as a psychologist, if I had some of the information, I would call. If for whatever reason I felt like I had to report medical child abuse, I'd say, well, there is a physician named Dr. Kirkpatrick who's prescribing this medication. I have other physicians saying they're concerned about medical child abuse. I would leave it up to his discretion because he's a licensed professional, but I feel like I have to report it. Like, that's the way I would probably report something like this, because other people's licenses are the ones on the line here. So,
yeah. Let's see, Jenny and GA, that's where you are, right? Georgia? Yeah. Jenny and GA says, let's see, do you feel like the defense made a mistake putting them on the stand? I don't think they do. I lost the comment over here. I was trying to put it on the screen and it disappeared. There it is. Do you think the defense made a good decision to put them on the stand? I don't think it's a bad decision. I think they have to.
Yeah, I don't think they have a choice.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's a bitter pill, but they have to swallow it, and so there's just so much revolving around them that the best they can hope for is that the plaintiff has no time left to question them, so that the pain is minimized. Because under proper direction, as they're sticking to their guns as far as what they believe they did and what was right for Maya and for the family and for the hospital. If that's all they have to talk about, it's not too bad. I mean, that the hospital's probably going to end up paying because of it, because that they took some action or were part of that taking action before they had the court order. But I think they have to put them on the stand. But if Mr. Hunter or Mr. Whitney has time left over when these guys come up, it's going to be fireworks, and it's going to be amazing.
So, one of the things that I've been wondering, and I don't know if anybody knows this, or because you all have gotten more information than I do, was a parental fitness evaluation. I know that's a very specific thing. Was one done? Because I haven't heard anybody talk about that.
Are you talking about with Beata specifically?
Yeah, with Beata specifically.
She did have an evaluation done in the Chapter 39 hearing or proceedings where they ruled out Munchausen by proxy.
See, and that was only a psych evaluation. If they had done a parental fitness, that would talk specifically about her parenting abilities, and then you have data that's irrefutable to say either she was being defensive or she wasn't, or she has these issues or she doesn't. It goes beyond just, and this is something that most people don't even know what the hell it is, but
I imagine they probably would have if had the proceedings gone further, where they first were looking to make sure there wasn't a crime being committed. That was the first thing. They had additional hearings scheduled, and that was probably going to be the next one they went to.
But I'll tell you though, I've done these, and they'll get these done within like a couple of weeks. Like, I'm talking like this doesn't take this. You don't have to wait months for one of these to happen, because we're talking about reuniting parents with their kids. So in my experience, maybe Georgia is different than Florida, but it'll be a couple of weeks, maybe it'll be longer, but you usually get parents in there pretty quick. So 3 months, in my experience, we absolutely would have already done and written up a report for parental fitness. We would not want it to go that long. So
have you seen a trial like this before where it's a civil suit over a separation where apparently they did it wrong?
I've been involved in trials, but not I haven't watched a trial like this before. Actually, no.
So I don't know. This question goes to the money. I can tell you they're asking for about $220 million. Now, some of that money is attached to allegations that have been thrown out by the judge and saying he can't go there, or the hospital has immunity for that because that happened under the umbrella of the Chapter 39 stuff. But that's what they're asking for, and I do believe if the jury sides with the family, it will be at least double digits in the millions. Is my guess.
I would think the same, just based on how that stuff usually goes.
I'm young. As soon as I said Hunter, I knew I had said the wrong name. I was hoping nobody would catch it. Thanks for calling me out on that one. Anderson, not Hunter. Thank you. Dr. G from AKA the Cat Lady. What do you think of the clash of cultures between Beata being Polish immigrant and the hospital made the situation, or do you think that the clash of cultures made the situation worse?
That's a good question. I don't know enough about Polish culture to say, but there definitely can be culture clashes that we see. I'm trying to think, I've had cases where culture played a big part into it in terms, and you always have to, okay, let me reset. I guess what the right way to respond to that is that we have to account for that. And hopefully the physicians think about that when they're interacting with her, more so than looking back on it. Cause like I said, I don't know enough about Polish culture to say for sure, but I would think it certainly could impact it. And my role when I've done evaluations of this kind is then I contact somebody who can explain Polish culture to me, or I'll do what research I can that feels relevant to it. So culture is always an important piece.
Let's see. I had another question and I scrolled. I missed it. Let's see. So this one. I don't think this was it, but we're going to put it up here. It's actually very satisfied to hear Dr. G explain mandated reporting, because I was wondering if it was just a USA thing or what. Thank you. Do you know is that there's probably some similar type rule somewhere else, even if it's not known by the same name? But generally, doctors worldwide are, they provide care, and police officers provide protection, and when they see something, they're obligated by their profession and their oath of office, so to speak, to do something, right?
Yeah, and in Georgia, if you don't report abuse that is very likely happening within 24 hours, you can be arrested. I don't know anybody who has been arrested, but you can be. So it is pretty serious.
I know, and in Florida, everyone over the age of 18 is a mandated reporter by law.
Oh, okay.
It's like blanket.
Yeah.
Valerie Ivy says, Dr. G, did you get the feeling that Bedy enjoyed control or power?
So it's a fair question. I would say, yeah, I don't know. That's. I mean, I have my own thoughts about this, but there's some places I would prefer not to go. So, yeah, no, I understand you ask, but yeah, I'll avoid that question for now.
We'll give you the pass. Yeah. All right. Watching, I should have told people to use a special mark for their questions, and now I can't find them. But let's see the videos you have coming up for both of these witnesses. I imagine you're probably going to do a breakdown on each one, and there's enough here for probably like a week's worth of videos on each one. What are your plans for that? What can we look forward to on your channel for both Sally Smith and Catherine Bedy?
So unless once I get to edit it, because I've recorded it all, and unless editing it means that I have to do two separate videos, it's going to be one video covering both of their testimonies. And basically sort of what we're talking about now, I'm doing a breakdown of how the jury would observe their body language, the way they're responding to questions. And then I talk a lot about the various experiences I've had and how I would have gone about it maybe differently, or not, just depending on what they're talking about.
And I know you were hesitant at first to dive into this case. In what you have been able to watch of the trial, what other players in the courtroom are exhibiting those body language and tells that you think, that might be something worth looking into? Is there anyone else, as far as either on the plaintiff side, on the defense, the judge?
I was about to say the judge's body language cracks me up. Yeah, the judge he has some pretty strong reactions. The judge does. I watched Maya's, and I was going to analyze. Well, I probably will still analyze her. I was originally going to do that along with this video. But one thing I've seen with her is that there seems to be a lot of very deeply genuine information that she's providing. And when we talk about jury's reactions, I think a jury is going to really resonate with Maya's testimony, because I found it very compelling, and it was at times hard to watch. I mean, it really was. And so I think so. I would say Maya is somebody that I'm going to be focusing on more. I can't remember the names of half the people I've watched. That's the problem. So,
There have been so many. We've been in trial for a month here. It's
Dr. Lewis was interesting. I watched some of his. He was the psychologist that analyzed Maya. He said a couple of things that I really disagreed with that I thought about including, but I was like, I'll save that for another video. But I mean, it was like he talked at one point. He said something like that you can't that every clinician is required to diagnose a patient, and like you can't not. I was like, that's not true. You don't have to diagnose people. You can see people that are diagnosed. That doesn't make any sense. So there's certain things he says, and I'm just like, that's just not true.
We had a witness on the stand, basically the star witness earlier today. It was an expert witness, a doctor that had some very strong things to say about the proper care for CRPS and how mostly it should consist of physical therapy and occupational therapy, ramping up to intensive therapy and a little bit of mental health help, and then later on in his testimony under cross, he basically had to admit that he had said previously he could diagnose CRPS over the phone. And then we also found out that at some other place that it's alleged that he told an audience that it would be better for kids to smoke marijuana than to take ketamine. So we have these strange things that came out.
Yeah.
And watching the defense, the reason I bring this up is because the defense table with the body language when these things went into it, they seemed deflated.
I'm sure they did. I'll have to go for that.
Oh, it's good stuff. I highly recommend that part as well. As far as the jury awarding money, I'm going to have to defer to some legal minds. I know tonight after this show, Rob at Law and Lumber has his show, and he's probably got a better person to talk to about that. Rob has been talking as well to the lawyer who lives down in Florida, Peter Tragos, and Peter Tragos has some great answers to that. So we'll defer to Rob and the legal minds on that one. But great question, Pippi.
But I would be shocked if they awarded more than $220 million. I doubt that's going to happen.
But. Yeah, I don't think this is going to be a runaway jury, and we're setting new records and let's go with the trillions type thing. I don't think that's going to happen, or billions even. Rambling Southerner says, as a clinician myself, would you agree with me that this hopefully could be a wake-up call to hospitals to not overload the therapists and staff so that they don't have time to correctly document?
Yeah, I think that depending on where you work. I mean, I worked in an inner city hospital for a couple of years, a long time ago, and the amount of work they just would pile on you was crazy. Even just the documentation alone was wild. I mean, the systems there weren't good. It's a long story, but yeah, I absolutely hope that this is a wake-up call. And I also hope that it's a wake-up call for, well, I guess depending on how you feel about this case, for cases like this, to make sure that you're looking at every bit of documentation that is out there, because the thing that sticks with me that I really struggle with is that Dr. Kirkpatrick and others basically said, don't pursue Munchausen by proxy. This is a real disorder. This is a real diagnosis for her. Another licensed professional telling me that. It's not that you can't disagree with somebody. I disagree with certain diagnoses all the time. But I certainly wouldn't then call it medical child abuse, because because there are other physicians involved with this. And that's the part of it that really is going to be the sticking point here.
Yeah. Going back to the MVP diagnosis, the hospital is sort of talking out of both sides of their mouth, right? They're saying this is what we were running with, that this is our suspicion. Yeah. But at the same time, their licensure is such that they cannot diagnose adults. They're not allowed to.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And so they're walking this fine line where they can't say we diagnosed her with Munchausen by proxy. And I believe part of that, we heard some testimony that part of that is you would have to do some sort of analysis, a psych eval of her before you could actually diagnose that. Is that?
Absolutely. No question. That is a very complex diagnosis. I've diagnosed it before, and we required video evidence of certain things happening to provide that. Well, we didn't have to, but that's one of those things that you have to be you have to really be serious before you diagnose that. Because that's something that gets thrown around. We'll talk about it, but when it comes to really saying, yes, this person has it, you got to have a lot of documentation. And that's what gets me about the other physicians that were on board is like, as soon as I would hear, if I was in this situation, I heard well, I'm not a physician, but if I heard MD saying, yeah, like this is, we're prescribing this medication, I go, okay, well, then even if I think that's possible, I would not be pursuing it like they did. At least I personally wouldn't. So it's confusing to me a little bit.
Yeah. Don, yes is the right answer. Watch Dr. G's channel. You're going to see a video.
Yes,
that's in the
she'll be
works.
coming next. I'm going to do hers as a separate video because it just felt better to do that as a different video. But yes, I plan to.
We had a question earlier that I missed. I was trying to click on it. It's scrolling so fast. I'm having trouble on my end. But the question was, if they suspected medical child abuse, why was Kyle not also taken from the home?
Yeah, I have no idea, because if there was a situation where I was concerned about that, then I was positive about it, I would recommend that all children be taken out of the home and evaluated, and the parents be evaluated yesterday. Like, let's get this done and make sure we know what's going on. So I can't fully make sense of it myself, honestly.
I don't envy the defense. They have an uphill battle to fight here, and if you listen to the jury questions, which I hope you get a chance to listen to them,
I will. Yeah.
It's brutal. Oh, it's like a bloodbath, and it's it's so bad. There were times that chat was basically saying, to Mr. Anderson, just sit down. The jury's got it. The jury will handle cross, and they were, and the jury was asking all the questions they needed to ask, and it's just.
Well, it's still hard for me to fully understand some of what happened when it comes to how long Maya was in the hospital, when it comes to, and maybe I'm projecting my own feelings, but there's just something about the way it was handled it just doesn't feel good. I'm trying to not overstate it, but it's very hard sometimes to watch some of the testimony, having been involved in some of those things. It's very challenging.
We've got a couple questions about some of the symptoms that Maya presented. Yeah. And there was one question that I thought should be answered. There was a point where they did some sort of nerve testing.
Yep.
And the doctors, even the doctors for the defense, acknowledged that she tolerated it very well, even where adults would be in pretty much agony during this testing. It's an invasive needles in the finger type
Sure.
thing.
Yeah.
And can you account for that? How can Maya not have the same reaction that any of us would have if we were in that much pain? What does that mean with all this, all these samples of,
means she's not malingering. I mean, that's what I think it means. In other words, she's not faking it, right? I mean, because it's usually when people fake this kind of stuff, they're not very sophisticated. I have dealt with people that have malingered. I mean, we've watched cases where I think people have been malingering, and usually people aren't very sophisticated with this stuff. They just aren't. They don't think through it that well, and that's one of the things that frustrated me. They talk about, and this was with Dr. Smith. They talk about recording. At one point, they say, "Did you talk about recording covert videos?" And in my video, I explained this. That's not that unusual in cases of where they're concerned about MVP, where they record to see what's happening. But then they talk about how they recorded Maya. I was like, hold on, no, you're going to want to record the parent, not her. Like, that's totally backwards. I was like, so.
Yeah. Valerie has another question. Dr. G, is Munchausen by proxy malicious? I mean, could a parent actually believe their child is sick?
Not really. Not if it's actual Munchausen by proxy. The people know that they are causing the sickness. It would be something. I mean, you could do something that looks like Munchausen by proxy and have some similar symptoms, but it wouldn't be Munchausen if that would be some sort of delusional disorder if they actually believe their child was sick and they were making them sick. But no, it's very intentional. It's very much, they might be in denial about it, but they very much know what they're doing. Because oftentimes they'll like inject their children with stuff, or they'll, feed them some kinds of poisons and all sorts of stuff. I mean, there's really very direct bad ways they do this.
The best movie I've ever watched that had this in it was The Sixth Sense.
Mhm.
They had an aspect. One of the people in that
Yeah.
segment. I'm not going to spoil the movie for you. It's not like it's still in theaters or anything,
Right.
but it does have a presentation of Munchausen by proxy
Mhm.
in there, where and it's shocking. I mean, when that's revealed, because I mean, it is. You've got someone who is, by very definition, you've got the caregiver, the parental figure, often
Mhm.
in the child's relationship, that is literally causing the pain, that's
Yeah.
causing the illness, and it's that blatant. It's I guess for it to truly be diagnosed as MVP, it's going to be something of that scale, right?
Yeah, it's like
The
putting
potential.
bleach or rat poison in somebody's food in small amounts to make them throw up or to make them have a rash or whatever it is. Yeah, but it's very literally that direct.
Yeah.
So wild.
Yeah, I'm sorry you have to deal with these people. Let's see. All right. Let's see if we have any more questions here to answer. Anything you want to say about Catherine Bedy or Sally Smith before we sort of wrap things up and get people ready for Rob on Lava Lumber?
Let's see. So there were a couple of questions. Somebody had, there's a yellow question up at the top.
Yep, let me bring that one up.
Yeah,
if I can. Trying. I can see it, but I'm not sure how to put it on the screen. Come on.
So I'll
read it to you. It says, question for Dr. G. This is from Creedem. Would learning a kid in your ER previously received over 50 infusions of 1 gram milligram of IV ketamine at least over the last year be something to raise alarm bells over? So this is addressing the ketamine issue.
Right. Okay. So I'm not a physician, but if there is a physician who is licensed, who is choosing for this to be their treatment, then I accept that as their treatment. That's, I mean, because I, regardless of the amount or any of those things, if this was something that was being done without the care of a physician, I mean, I'd always be concerned if somebody's treating somebody medically without that. But like I said, these were by licensed people. So, it doesn't really, I might say, hey, maybe you should go get a second opinion, but I'm not a physician. So if there's doctors that are willing to do this, then oftentimes I leave it in their hands.
Another one here from Charlie Lynn says, wouldn't Maya get better if this was truly MVP?
It depends on if somebody was continuing to somehow make her ill. I mean, they're suggesting in some sense it could have been what's called a conversion disorder, or in other words, it's in her head and she's making herself ill. It's complicated. So in theory, yes, but not necessarily. There's various aspects.
Lori Lenny brings up that there may be another case that has similar aspects to it. I think this is going to be very telling. If Johns Hopkins loses this case, you might see a lot of other cases filed.
Yeah, I think so. I've already been seeing some stuff online, so yeah, it's not good.
Yeah, so I can't comment on any of the other cases and anything. We haven't followed that at all. But yeah, I think if this does go successfully for the family, I think this will pave the way for probably, and what I predict will probably be settlements in other cases.
Yes, I would presume so as well. Yeah, because that would be, so I would be shocked if their insurance companies were not going to be very upset with some of these folks.
Yeah, it's they're in damage control is what it looks like. Literally, defense. All they're trying to do is minimize the damage. I think from the comments the judge has made, where he literally on Friday, he's like, "Look, say she had Munchausen by proxy, okay? That doesn't take away the fact that you took her before you had authority, you and the battery charges. It's like nothing about the chapter 39 stuff is affects that at all. She could be like a poster child for Munchausen by proxy, and you're still treated Maya wrong, and the defense hasn't addressed that yet.
And that's what I'd say is one of the challenges is that the organization I worked in, and maybe it was just because one of the relatives of one of the people was a judge, but like all we thought about was how do we make sure that we're doing everything exactly the right way so that these things don't happen. And on top of that, the compassionate thing to oftentimes do is, like, if there's a kid who's in immediate danger, you get him out of that situation. If it's something that you're worried about, like Munchausen by proxy, you have a little more time actually to figure that out. It's very different than serious physical abuse or something to that effect.
Clipson's Vixen Amber says, if J Hatch felt the outside treatment with ketamine was so egregious and abusive, why not go after the providers who decided that course of treatment? Providers have a duty to report other providers too. And I think you mentioned that would be your call. If you suspected something, you would say, hey, I've got this doctor that's doing XYZ, right?
Yeah. If I was really that concerned about it, generally speaking, I don't try to, pull rank on other licensed professionals unless it's something that I think is literally abusive, in which case, they would be the ones that I would be reporting, not the parents. I would probably call defects and mention it because I'm required to, but it would be within the proper context. And defects doesn't, honestly, they don't follow up on everything unless you're like, you better follow up on this. It's like, they follow up less than what they don't follow up on everything, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
So but legally, once you've reported, whether or not they follow up is no longer on the report.
Yeah, doesn't matter.
They get to make the decision on that side. You don't have to follow up with them and say, hey, have you called yet? Have you checked on this? And so unless you were seeing additional signs of concern.
Yeah, and I would, and if it was a situation I was concerned, I mean, they always follow up on things that are serious, but if I was concerned about it, I would just call them again and be like, hey, you guys, they said you never followed up, so somebody please do that.
Let's see. I've got one from Nancy. Let's see if I can find this one here. It was something about, what do you think about her dad knowing things? Have you listened at all to Jack's testimony about the relationship and
knowing things about what, I guess, would be my question. I've watched some of it, but I'm not sure if I know what this is referring to.
It might be referring to Jack was interrogated, I guess you can say, or interviewed, as the detective said, in a hospital room. She had a badge and a gun and said, I need to talk to you. And they sat down and she asked him a lot of questions. And during that, he seemed to be saying a lot of answers that were the right thing to say to her.
Yeah.
And some of the comments he made were not the most complimentary of Beata, saying, hey, I think she's pushed too far, things like that. So I guess the question might be, if you had seen that, if you got any indication that Jack might have known that something was going on that wasn't appropriate.
Oh, I haven't watched enough of his to say, but the reality is that Beata may have been very intense. She probably was, but that doesn't mean that she was medically abusing her child, or at least not knowingly so. And that's the thing is Munchausen by proxy would be, she wants attention for this. She's going to make her child sick so she can look so amazing for curing her child. That's the psychological goal of this. And so, without being able to prove that, without being able to suggest that, you're at a loss for that being. So you can think that she's getting her treatment she doesn't need, but it wouldn't be that. It wouldn't be Munchausen by proxy.
Was there anything in Beata's behavior that would have gone along with that? I mean, seeking multiple medical doctors. I mean, they had a whole list of doctors they were trying to seek, like doctor shopping is what the defense called it. Is that go along with Munchausen by proxy?
It can. I mean, it can be, because it's usually like people present with vague symptoms and they do shop around to different doctors and all of this. I mean, I understand some of the arguments there, but that's sort of superficial. I mean, that can be the criteria on their face are very broad for Munchausen by proxy, actually. So in that sense, that there's some overlap there, but that doesn't mean we don't know enough about her psychologically to say that would apply for her.
Yeah. And sadly, as she's no longer with us, we can't ask her these questions. What we do have, and what came into testimony, or came into evidence, was admitted today into evidence, was her emails and her writings into her blog. Mm-hmm. And this blog was a blog she kept about Maya and about Maya's progress, and it was written in first person by Beata. And so, have you seen any of that?
No, but I'm definitely going to go look. Yeah, I'll be interested to see what that says.
It's it a little, initially, to me, this is just a little different. And then as I was talking with people in chat who have been through a situation with a family that have had a difficult path, and they said it's not much different than you writing a family Christmas letter to all your friends, and like, this year we did that, and so was really happy about this. But it's sort of documented for the individual themselves to be able to see what happened when they really aren't able to remember everything that occurred because coma or whatever else.
Sure.
So that'll be interesting. I'd look forward to hearing from you if you take a look at that.
I definitely will.
Let's see if we have any other questions. We'll gonna try to wrap things up here in just a bit. But did you see anything? Can you see the questions?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm looking at.
Is there anything you wanted that jumped out to you, or a comment that we'd like to address? I'm gonna put these up while we're talking.
Let me see here.
I think these all popped up on the screen while I had the previous live going as well, because I recognized the names from the last live. They didn't all join here during our session, but it's wonderful to have these new people. I wanted to recognize them as well. So thank you very much for that. All right. Looking on the last of the list here, let's see if we have any other questions we can answer. Amber says, Dr. Oops, that's the wrong one here, right here. Dr. G, can you explain how this behavior and treatment of Maya and family could have largely contributed to Beata making her final decision?
So when people make decisions like that, it's oftentimes based in distorted beliefs about the impact that it's going to have. Oftentimes people think, so if anybody's to a place where their mental health gets them to where they're making those kinds of decisions, oftentimes the way they look at the world is distorted. So I'm sure there are arguments that could be made that this contributed to it, but we don't know exactly what was going on. Well, I don't know if she, well, actually, I think she left a note, but I suspect it is possible. It's hard to say, though. It would be a hard argument, because somebody would say, well, we didn't cause it because that's not a rational act, and so that it had to have been based on something else. Taking responsibility for that is going to be would be far more complicated to try to prove than anything else they're trying to prove. So
yeah, and it also has probably the largest punitive damage allotment attached to it as well.
Yeah.
So it's heavily litigated, and they're fighting every piece of that.
But that's going to be challenging. That will be.
Yeah, that'll be hard. We've had a lot of questions about the doctor that failed to report. It was probably one of the most explosive moments in the trial, is when Mr. Anderson said, "Hey, this just came to us. We have this allegation of SA that occurred at the hospital." Well, Maya was there, and it was just like you could have heard a pin drop, and through a lot of arguments and motions, basically the judge ruled that it can't come in on this trial. They can't right now present an allegation of sexual abuse by a doctor in the hospital to this jury that hasn't been asked questions about that.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be fair. It would be basically just begging for an appeal that would be granted and a redo. But during that, some of the testimony, as we have watched that outside the presence of the jury, has really frustrated us. And one of the doctors, specifically the one that took the notes, have you seen that little piece where
I don't think so.
She actually makes the allegation. She said previously a doctor came in and looked at her in an abusive sort of way, and then left the room. And that note was in the medical record, but there was no call made. And
okay.
And so people are asking and saying, I guess the question is, should a call have been made? I think yes. I think at least the least that should have happened possibly is that additional follow-up questions should be asked, additional investigation of some sort. But yeah, so we'll have to watch for that.
So there's a question over here, Maddie. It's in blue, where she asked if I can explain why doctors get a God complex. Do you see that question?
I think the blue is just on.
Maybe it's just on my side.
Oh, there it is, right there. Got it.
Okay. So can I explain why? So Maddie, can I explain why doctors get a God complex? All right. If there are doctors with God complexes, they had them before they became doctors. That's probably what made them pursue becoming doctors. We have physicians like that. We have psychologists like that. There are people in many professions like that. But when you have legitimate power, it makes it way worse. So if you have somebody who, has a job that doesn't have as much legitimate power, if they're sort of for lack of a way of putting it, like if they're sort of an entry-level employee at a company, the God complex, they may feel that way, but it's not reinforced by people. But if you're a physician or you're an ER doctor or whatever, people are going, yes, you really are this good. So it makes it so much worse.
And if they have authority, I mean, the police officer, you name it, that is an outlet for them to express that, to then reinforce and validate their beliefs.
So they had the God complex going in. That's what made them go there in the first place. That's why we see so many crazy actors, because it just attracts crazy people. But yeah, like, I mean, I've known psychologists like that too, for sure. And they were like that well before they were licensed. So
Man. We've got one here from Horse Welfare. Not sure if we can answer this. It says, Dr. G, can you comment on the text messages in which the doctor claimed to correctly predict Beata ending her life?
oh, I didn't see that. I missed that somewhere. Okay.
It's a doozy. It's a fun one. This is watch for the text messages that talk about Ketamine Girl,
Okay.
because they refer to Maya as Ketamine Girl, and it's painful. It's painful to see it.
I've got a lot of videos to make, I think, now that
you've got like a year's worth at least on this alone. This trial is expected to go basically to the end of the month with testimony, and then we've got a couple days of jury deliberation. I think it's supposed to be finished no later than November 9th. That's like the hard stop.
The lack of compassion calling her Ketamine Girl, though. Sorry to go back to that, but it's just like I actually hadn't heard about that, and that really bothers me a lot, because I know what it's like to have these people in your care, and there's definitely certain person, like when I worked in inpatient, there was one person who was really, really wild, and he was sort of known for his wild antics and stuff. So sometimes people get reputations, but the idea of talking about a girl who's been taken away from her parents as Ketamine Girl that's disgusting to me, really. Like, I really don't like that.
Yeah. It's when you see it, it's actually been presented over and over and over through the trial, and they can bring it up.
That's
they're beating the hospital over the head with this, with every single witness they can.
Good, they should.
All right. How can families, AJ Red Sox says, how can families protect themselves from false allegations like this case? I've seen a few more cases like this at the JH.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Man, protecting yourself from false allegations. It's because it's hard to say, because you're basically fighting false allegations. So hopefully you have somebody that can help fight with you, right? I mean, it's to man, it's so hard, right? Because as a professional, it's easy for me to say because I've got people I can call, but hopefully hopefully people would have a connection with a therapist or a physician that they trust and could make some calls for them. Because you really have to have people in your corner is the thing. You can't expect to do it on your own, because really a lot of people just aren't going to listen to you. And that's just the sad reality of it. People are going to go, yeah, you and everybody else get in the back of the line, right? I mean, I'm sure you didn't really do any of this stuff. Neither did anybody else who's, I mean, like,
that's what they all say, right?
Yeah,
that's
exactly what they all right. That's exactly what happens.
So in Florida, I've heard that they have some pretty strong, they call them med-mal laws, medical malpractice laws that really protect the hospital quite a bit. Even so much to the point that if you are making an accusation against a hospital, and we saw this earlier in the trial, to testify against them, you have to be almost in the exact same position at a similar facility, doing the exact same thing. I mean, it's so narrow that you almost have to have an insider who's willing to turn on the hospital to pursue it. So it's an uphill battle. The fact that this case even got to trial, I mean, it's been years to get here and taken multiple attempts to get to trial. And so this is like a bellwether type case.
Yeah, seriously.
If the families prevails in this case, do you see changes in the industry? Do you see the hospital just, we lost that one,
look,
write it off?
If what I'm just saying over here, tell Dr. G that the head of ethics was calling Maya K Girl, like, if that's, I don't know if that's true or not. Presuming that that's true, then we're probably not going to see as many sweeping changes as we should. I have a pretty low bar set for a lot of folks with this stuff, because I think we have very short memories. In a 6 months time, I think that the culture at that hospital will change. I'm not so sure how much of an impact it'll have elsewhere, other than on this specific issue about ketamine, because ketamine is becoming nowadays it's becoming a much more common treatment for a wide variety of issues. I have patients that are severely depressed that get ketamine infusions. A number of them, actually. So it's becoming a very common treatment.
Yeah. I think we answered this partially before. How can you advocate for yourself without rubbing medical professionals the wrong way?
Stay away from the ones with God complexes. They're not. You're going to rub them the wrong way no matter what. I mean, really, you do have to find compassionate people. And hopefully, and I don't have relationships like professionally I do, but like personally with all that many people in medical. So I know a lot of folks probably don't know. Maybe they know their general physician and maybe somebody else, but it's not even that you need to be respectful of people, because sometimes people won't listen. But I just think that you got to find people who will listen to you. I mean, I think it's as simple as that. If you feel like that there's something wrong going on, it's going to be a matter of continuing to talk to as many people as you can, but it's not easy. There's no easy answer to any of this stuff. I wish there was.
Yeah. This trial is not over yet. I know we've got a few days left of defense testimony. I think the fireworks are going to be the biggest at the end, especially as we have all the competing issues of time, where every second is going to count.
Yeah.
The hospital is throwing everything they can up to try to stop this from moving forward.
Yeah.
I'm sure there will be more instances where the hospital is asking, or the defense is asking for a mistrial. We've got a legal minefield that the lawyers are trying to navigate with all the different testimony, what can't come in already. So it's going to be incredible all the way to the very last bit. We've been tracking just the objections that we can hear in the case, and we're at 1,354 objections. Okay, it's and that's not counting all the ones that happen that get edited out of depositions.
Oh, sure.
And it's
the deposition. Some of those, the editing of some of those is very interesting. And I comment on some of that in my video, but it's interesting what they choose to show and to cut out. And I think I always wonder who's the one editing this stuff, because there's some that makes some people look better and some look worse. Like there was one where one of the doctors rolls her eyes, and it literally just shows what she says. It shows just a clip of her rolling her eyes, and then it shows more of the testimony.
We want that part in. We want her rolling her eyes, and that's how they do it. The sides choose what they want in, and they have to pay for it in time, basically. So they can buy, using time, they can buy the defense portion where they ask a question and the answer came out actually was helpful for the plaintiff. They can say we want this in, and vice versa. So it's really interesting to watch. And some of the stuff is great, but yeah, the editing, these guys are not making feature films. Let's put it that way. It's really rough, but also at the same time, they can't really polish things up because for legal reasons, they can't go and say, well, I'll take that little bit out. I'm going to adjust. I could fade in the audio here, and that's a no-go. So they're really cutting and pasting and gluing things together, and that's the way it goes. All right. Do you see anything else? I was gonna wrap up here unless you saw any other questions we were gonna that you want to address.
There was one other one, but I might have missed it. I'm sure, because now my brain is like.
Well, while you're looking for that, I was going to ask you also about your course and how that's going for you. Or
so I've got a course that teaches forensic body language. So in other words, how to read body language of criminals and trials and all of that stuff. I had one that I taught live, but now I have one that's just pre-recorded. And it's going to go back live. It's going to go live back on my website in the next week or so. So if anybody is interested in doing the asynchronous course, the one where they can just take in and do it at their leisure, it's pretty cool. I've gotten great feedback on it. People really like it. So it's pretty cool.
Awesome. I found a question that Kimar really wants asked. Kimar's been a huge, generous donor today on the channel. So thank you, Kim. Dr. G, have you watched the Take Care of Maya on Netflix?
My wife has, but I didn't, specifically because I didn't want to. It's a documentary, and documentaries can color how you feel about things. I try my best to be objective about this. So I have not, specifically for that reason. So I will once this is all wrapped up and I'm not making any more videos.
Auntie Jess saying, can we get a link to Dr. G's channel at any time on my channel when we're live? If you type !DR, it will respond with the link to Dr. G's channel. So if you do that right now, it will happen for you. At least it should. It says it's working. So.
Let me see. And here's one thing I was going to say. And now I remember the comment flashed. It wasn't from something anybody said, but it was in reference to something we talked about earlier. When we're talking about, it was something related to comments. But anyway, I digress. What I'm trying to say is that sometimes when people have to pursue a diagnosis that's complicated or rare, it's easy to sort of label them as like they're doctor shopping, or like that they've got Munchausen by proxy. But I can tell you, with my own experience with this, which I hadn't even thought about until we're talking about this today, when I was a kid, my house had mold in it and we didn't know. And I was getting chronic pneumonia like all the time. And they thought the issue was in my lungs. And just by happenstance, we happened to have a doctor that went, oh, no, it's like, it's in your sinuses and all this stuff. So I was able to do all this surgery and get fixed up. But like, had I not had that one doctor who figured it out, I have no idea what would happen to me, and this stuff happens. Sometimes unusual things have to be pursued. So this is a complicated case, and I get why having a nurse for a mother, she would be very passionate and probably frustrated at times trying to get care for her daughter. So
we had testimony today in trial where the witness said, I ruled out CRPS because it's never happened in all 4 extremities before. And at the same time, I believe from the same witness, we heard that CRPS can start in 1 or 2 limbs and spread to the other side of the body. And I'm like, are you hearing yourself? She's like, yeah, it says regional. And so because it's all over pain, it can't be CRPS.
Well, and this is what gets me. And I would say this is true of psychology as well, is that diagnoses, while great guidelines, sometimes they color out of the lines a little bit. They're not always clean and perfect. Sometimes somebody meets 9 out of 10 criteria, but they still really have the diagnosis. It's just, and so you've got to learn to be flexible with this stuff. And that's why when they talk about, oh, we caught her doing things that she shouldn't be able to do, and we saw Maya doing things that somebody with CRPS shouldn't do, it's like, then send her to somebody to see if she's malingering. Like this is easily solvable. Psychologists, we can do this. We can tell you whether or not she's lying. It's not that hard. So why not find out? That's why I don't understand what happens.
Yeah. So. Listen to Learn says, Dr. G, when might your videos on Smith and Bedy be dropped? After the trial?
No, I'm gonna probably edit them tonight, and they are long, so it's probably tomorrow afternoon, I'm gonna guess.
My dog Clover says, how do you deal with people who think they or others know better than the professionals?
I deal with that on a daily basis. I work with couples a lot. So trust me, I got lots of angry husbands that know a lot more than I do. At least so they tell me. So, it's, and I tell people, if people feel like they know more than me, it's like, look, I understand your perspective, but my training tells me this. That's as simple as that. People can disagree with me. I don't. And that's the thing about the God complex. I'm not insisting that anybody believe me, but I'm telling them that my professional opinion is this, but they don't have to accept it.
Well, Dr. G, I can commit to you that I'm going to get my software working so that I can play videos next time. I'm frustrated that I wasn't able to play them for you today. There are so many people in this trial. You mentioned the judge. Obviously, you're going to do a video on Maya. The lawyers themselves, they're fantastic. These are top-notch lawyers on both sides, and I like all of them. I like all of them. They're really admirable and doing great work for their clients. Mm-hmm. But oh my goodness, the body language is great. I wish I'm able to watch on Zoom. So I log into the court Zoom and I can watch what happens, but I can't record that. I can't take screenshots. I can't even play the audio for you guys. So I've been watching body language when it's not played on the live stream. And I wish so much that we could go into because it's hilarious. Mr. Hunter, I don't think he can have an emotion without exhibiting it in a very outward manner. And it's neat to watch, especially as questions come in and you can see that, it's like, oh no, they remembered to go there. I think it's so much fun. I think you'd enjoy watching that, but unfortunately we'll have to save that for another trial.
But anytime you want to, this sounds like this trial is going to be going on for a while. You want to do this again once we get the video working? Let me know. I'm game me. I'm game anytime. So you just let me know.
And you have been incredibly gracious and kind to be available. And is your day off still Fridays?
Yeah, I take every Friday off to just work on videos. So that's one of the joys.
Sounds good. Well, I cannot wait. I cannot wait to hear your next video and watch that. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to cover Cathi Bedy and Sally Smith, and it's these are the two. We'll get to watch it probably. If you drop it this week, we'll watch it before they testify again in court. So we're gonna learn from what you tell us in your video, and then we're gonna watch them testify live. And we're like, Dr. G told us about this.
Hopefully they don't watch it. You might get some
maybe they will. Maybe they will. You never know. Dr. G, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show.
You bet.
Thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and wrap up. I'll tell everyone what I tell them always when I end. Tonight, when you go home, please hug the people you love. Smile at someone, make their day just a little bit better, and please stay safe till we go live again. We'll be back tomorrow morning with the Maya trial. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Dr. G, thank you as well. Have a great night. All right.